Hello, everybody. My name is Spencer Walsh. Welcome to today's show. We are coming to you on recorded today. This is not live. We're going to be coming to you today on Thanksgiving. We got a lot of fun stuff to talk about, but we also have to talk about COVID-19, a somber holiday for the United States amid a record number of daily cases and deaths. A reminder that the winter will be tough no matter what happens this holiday. Also, Jake Tapper, what's up with him? I mean, he rarely misses an opportunity to pick a losing fight with Representative Rashida Tlaib, and also does have a weird history of mocking like black rap culture and making it about Iraq war pundits from the mid-2000s. Very, very weird stuff with him. Also, today, we're going to be talking a little bit about Joe Biden and a recent tweet that he did that I think is so interesting and really does draw a lot of attention. It's a very short, just 3 words, but tells a whole story. Finally, Thanksgiving, why it sucks. Yes, we're going to be Debbie Downers on that score, folks, and tell you, I'll share with you what I'm drawing from this Thanksgiving, and we're going to break down a great article about it in Discourse blog. Thankful for them and all the great journalists out there this Thanksgiving, and maybe I'll share a little bit what I'm thankful for. This is our Thanksgiving episode of Newsflash. Thanks so much for listening. All right, yes, hopefully everybody's having a healthy, happy, safe Thanksgiving for everybody here. That is definitely what we hope is going on. All the listeners of the show, especially thankful for you guys having some of the most successful months of SWR in history right here. So very thankful for all of that. All right, so we get into this today with COVID-19. As Americans will celebrate Thanksgiving on Thursday with the pandemic at perhaps its most precarious point yet. So that is definitely something to keep in mind here. Coronavirus cases in the United States have reached record heights with an average of more than 176,000 a day over the past week. Deaths are soaring with more than 2,200 announced on both Tuesday and Wednesday, the highest daily total since early May. Even as reports of new infections being to level off in parts of the Midwest, the progress is being offset by fresh outbreaks on both coasts and south, and especially in the Southwest, where officials are scrambling to impose new restrictions to slow the spread. So we're getting these second waves, but they're not entirely spread out. So we're getting like maybe second waves in, for example, say we're actually getting first waves in the Midwest, we're getting second waves in the Southwest and on the coasts. Like, it is a bad situation. The second wave is hitting everybody. It's also kind of hitting everybody at uneven points on the scale here. So that makes it all the more tough because of the way just kind of America works and how spread out it is, I think, in comparison to other countries. Although it's definitely worse in some parts of other countries, too. I'm not saying other countries do not have regions. So the national uptick includes weekly case records in places as diffuse as Delaware, Ohio, Maine, and Arizona, where more than 27,000 cases were announced over 7 days, exceeding the state's summer peak. That's in reference to Arizona there. In New Mexico, grocery stores are being ordered to close if 4 employees test positive. Michelle Jean Grisham there, the governor, said a Thanksgiving gathering there may result in a funeral a couple of months later. So really putting it strong there. In LA County, restaurants can no longer offer in-person dining. In Pipa County, Arizona, which includes Tucson, cases have reached record levels, and officials are imposing a voluntary curfew. What we're trying to do is decrease social mobility, says Pipa County Health Director Teresa Cullen. Meanwhile, deaths are surging, especially in the Midwest and the region that has drove much of the case growth this fall. More than 900 deaths have been announced over the past week in Illinois, along with more than 400 each in Indiana, Ohio, and Wisconsin. And when you get the cases, that's the tough part. This is a really kind of unfortunate part about the situation is, like, when you get the cases there, almost no matter what, the deaths will follow to a somewhat proportionate rate of, like 1% of the people who, like, for example, say if you have 300,000 cases daily, then you're sooner rather than later you're going to see like 3,000 people dying. So that's kind of the numerical translation there, and that is of course applicable for cases in each state. And so And it depends on who's getting them, and it really depends a lot. The summer outbreak was a little bit worse, or not as lethal as the fall outbreak, because it was more spread out, and really so much of it was from kind of New York nursing homes. A huge portion of it was actually from that, and that just kind of proves and shows to you how insane Andrew Cuomo is in so many different respects. But health officials obviously have worried aloud for weeks that large Thanksgiving gatherings could seed another wave of infections in a time when the country can really scarcely afford it. Hospitals are already full. Contract tracers have been overwhelmed, and healthcare workers are exhausted. Remember, healthcare workers are humans too, everybody. That is for sure. Wisconsin is in a bad place right now, with no sign of things getting better without action. An open letter signed by hundreds of employees at UW Health, the state's university medical center and health system, said, "We are quite simply out of time without immediate change. Our hospitals will be too full to treat all those with the viruses and those with other illnesses or injuries." Wisconsin definitely not a state you want to go, because the virus outbreak has been hitting old people incredibly hard in that area. And really, no matter what happens, no matter really where you are, the virus always diffuses up, and it always hits the most vulnerable, and that is oftentimes the elderly. So that is the thing you got to remember there. And that is what happens when you kind of analyze the outbreaks, and when it hits over different regions. It's a very, very sad thing. So more than 260,000 people have died of coronavirus in the United States, and the evening of Thanksgiving, President-elect Joe Biden spoke of his family's losses and urged Americans to hang on and call for unity. So new cases in the United States are up 38%, and deaths are up 57%. So hopefully we see some sort of plateauing, and of course a plateauing in deaths, but we don't know. We're only hitting the holiday season, baby. All right, so here is another story in regards to the coronavirus. The Supreme Court late Wednesday barred restrictions on religious services in New York that Governor Andrew Cuomo imposed to combat the coronavirus. And this is the start of the era, the ACB era right here, because the vote was 5-4 with Chief Justice John G. Roberts. Really, the court was incredibly divided about this. We have people who are in the majority or in the minority writing these concurring arguments, so pretty much where one justice can be like, well, oh yeah, I disagree with everything you said except for this. And that's where they can just put it in a separate, it's called concurring piece. So there were a lot of concurring arguments, concurring opinions on this one that were like, I kind of get you, I'm kind of with you, but on the way there. So pretty much a lot of the, like almost all the justices had kind of their own distinct opinion on this. So it's very instructive. The vote was 5-4 with Chief Justice John G. Roberts and the court's 3 liberal members in dissent. So there you can tell the deciding vote there would have been RBG if she was still alive. But of course now it's Amy Coney Barrett playing a decisive role. The court's ruling was at odds with early ones concerning churches in California and Nevada. In those cases, in May, decided in May and July, the court allowed the state's governors to restrict attendance at religious services. But now we got a new member, and that is the direct outcome of these cases, and that's unquestionably going to lead to more deaths. I mean, in my mind, the states should really be. I mean, I think, and you're going to get a lot of Americans behind on this. The religious organizations should more or less be treated like normal businesses, because in reality, that is what they function to be. Like, we have had the Hasidic population in New York be responsible for these massive events, and really that have spread and caused a lot of cases, not just within their community, which is one thing, I do grant you that, but it is within a huge amount of different communities, but and it does spread throughout the city, because it's a very populous area that we're dealing with here. So that is the reality of the situation, and it is so important, I think, that we have these groups being treated like what they are, which is not like these special havens of liability-free action, but actually a place where there needs to be accountability. There needs to be accountability for everybody. Everybody else has accountability, and if they don't have it, and if they don't have some sort of standard, normal set of laws, like the ones that everybody else are following, for example, how about those for a start? Then I think that's just an absolutely BS and unfair system, and really gives way too much of a precedent of religion over everything else, which is supposedly a secular society. So the Supreme Court's membership obviously has changed since May, where Justice Barrett succeeding RBG, who died in September. The vote in the earlier cases was also 5-4, but in the opposite direction, with Chief Justice Roberts joining Justice Ginsburg and the other three members of what was then the court's four-member liberal wing. And by the way, John Roberts, not a liberal, so don't anybody ever say that to me. In an unsigned opinion, the majority said Cuomo's restrictions violate the First Amendment's protection of the free exercise of religion. In a concurring opinion, Justice Neil Gorsuch said Cuomo had treated secular activities more favorable than religious ones. It is past time to make plain that while the pandemic poses many grave challenges, there is no world in which the Constitution tolerates color-coded executive edicts that reopen liquor stores and bike shops but shutter churches, synagogues, and mosques. So yeah, that is, again, the double standards that we've seen a lot of people complaining about. But those things are, not only are they actual stores where the people need to, it's a much more precarious economic situation. Those are, these are tax bases. These are things that are literally keeping the state afloat because of the president that's currently in office literally refuses to provide any federal aid to New York. And I don't want to be in the position of defending Andrew Cuomo here, but I think what we have to do is treat this as a kind of standard system. And of course, there's going to be a lot of double standards. I do think that maybe not all, there are ways to do this, I think, in a corona safe way, especially dependent on the situation. But I think it really has to be the same for everyone. And I think really, if you look at what's going on here, the Supreme Court and I could argue Andrew Cuomo are not living up to their respective sides of the argument here. Let's run through some more COVID headlines. The Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, Pandemic Edition, is kicking off right now in New York. Instead of 42 giant balloons and floats, there were 30. Many of the high school marching bands from around the country stayed home, and the parade covered only a snippet of the additional 2.5-mile route confined to a single block of 34th Street between 6th and 7th Avenue in Manhattan. But the annual Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade did kick off on Thursday morning, with the organizers determined not to let the pandemic completely derail the pageantry. So, with the New York City Rockettes, minus the famous kick lines that were scrapped to adhere to social distancing guidelines, and Dolly Parton, and, of course, Santa Claus, the ritual marker of the start of the holiday season, got underway at Herald Square. So that's the pretty much the capitalism donation drive starting bell right there. So awesome to see the start of the holiday season, and the shopping, all the stuff that's bound to occur with that. Probably less so than ever this year because of the system that we're in has failed to protect Americans through a pandemic. The system will not reap the rewards as much when it comes time for their big collective orgasm at the end of the year. But planning this year's event, believe it or not, was really a singular feat of logistical legerdemain. Starting in March, the parade planners at Macy's and NBC, which airs the event, had to rip up the carefully calibrated script and come up with an entirely new blueprint. What I know about Thanksgiving Day a month ago is different from what I know now, says Susan Teixeira, who's executive producer of the event for Macy's. How do you plan something in June that's going to happen in November when you have no idea where the country is going to be at then? History set a high bar for canceling the parade, which has gone off every year since 1924, except for the 3 years during World War II. Delta announces quarantine-free flights from Atlanta to Rome for the first time since the coronavirus pandemic swept across Europe and the United States. A pilot program will allow a number of passengers to travel across the Atlantic from Atlanta to Italy without having quarantine upon arrival, according to a Delta Airlines news release on Thursday. The airline said it worked with officials in both Georgia and Italy, and the program would rely on a strict testing protocol to ensure the flights be conducted safely and coronavirus-free. So starting December 19th, all U.S. citizens permitted travel for Italy for essential reasons such as work, health, and education, as well as all EU and Italian citizens would have to test negative for COVID 3 times, once with a PCR test taken up to 72 hours before departure, once with a rapid test at the Hartsfield Jackson Airport in Atlanta, and then once at a rapid test with Rome. So if you want to go to Rome, you can do it. So congratulations. AstraZeneca has been in problem. The British coronavirus